Hi, welcome to Talking Books and Stuff, the program that talks all about books and writing and stuff. Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Hello, I'm DR, the podcast guy. Thanks for tuning in. This one is a two-parter. We will first talk with Glenna Healy, and then we will talk with Bud Sarich. He's in his early 90s. He has a book called 9 Decades Well Spent. We will hear all about it, and if you want a copy, 9 Decades at shaw.ca, and that's for the book, and that's 9 Decades, all one word, at shaw.ca. Okay, now on with the show. Hello again, it's Talking Books and Writing and Stuff, and today we're talking about a book called 9 Decades Well Spent, the story of my life. But actually, we're not talking with the author quite yet. The author is Bud Sarich from Saskatoon. With us now is Glenna Healy. She is related somehow to Bud Sarich. So Glenna from Calgary, maybe you can just take over and fill us in from there.
Oh, I'd love to. Well, thanks for phoning. Bud is my cousin, and so out of I think 36 cousins, he's the third oldest, and I'm the youngest. So our mums were sisters back in the olden days, and that's how we're related.
And then Bud decided one day, I guess, he's going to write a book. So how did you get involved?
Well, it was actually my idea. I'm thinking, so Bud and I really have only met about 3 or 4 times in our lives. And they're usually at big family reunions. And one of the things I've learned from him is he's very wise. And he loves to tell stories. And so over the years, I'd phone him, 2 or 3 times a year. And I would just listen to him talk. And sometimes he would talk about investment. And that's something I'm very interested in. So I would take notes while he talked. And so over the pandemic, I hadn't talked to Bud for a while, and I figured I should phone him. So I phoned him, and we chatted a bit. And both he and I, we kind of ran out of things to talk about. And once you speak with Bud, you'll find that hard to believe because he never runs out of things to talk about.
Exactly.
He's full of stories. He's full of stories. But anyways, we were chatting maybe in February or March, and I think we were both just a little down. And we're kind of bored, and he's in a more of a lockdown situation than I am. But I wonder if I should record some of his stories, or I want to type them out. So I thought about it for a bit, and then I thought, well, I don't have anything going on because we're all in a lockdown situation. So I proposed to him over the phone, I think. I said, Bud, why don't we type out some of your stories? And I said, heck, why don't we just write your life story? And unknown to me, he'd always wanted to write his story, but the situation he's in now, he didn't have a way to do that. So he thought about it for, I don't know, a couple weeks. And one day he phoned me back and said, so are you serious? And I said, about what? He said, about writing my life story. I said, yeah, I don't have anything going on. And it's very funny. He said, well, how are we going to do it? I said, I don't know. You're in Saskatoon and I'm in Calgary. I don't know how we're going to do this. So what did we do? The first week, we hummed and hawed over the phone. And we tried to figure out what to do. And finally he said, well, this is ridiculous. I just have to write it out. And once I have something written, I'll phone you back. Okay. So when he phoned me back, maybe a day later, he had about, 10 double-spaced pages handwritten out. He read it to me over the phone, and I typed it in. And we did this for about 3 months. One day he would read to me, and I would type. When we hang up, I edit. He goes back to writing. The next day, I put it on a Google link. So the next day he would open his Google link and he would read what we wrote and we would edit it together. So we did this pretty well every day from 2 till 4 for 3 months. So probably 5 days a week for 3 months. We spent 2 hours on the phone. And then he would spend probably 5 or 6 hours a day writing, and I would spend a couple hours a day editing. And one day, he got to the finish line. And it was like, okay, that's all I have to write, he said. And I went, okay, I don't know what to do now. But that's how we wrote the book.
And this is Talking Books and Writing and Stuff. We're talking with Bud Sarich, LP Bud Sarich. He's currently residing in Saskatoon. He has a book out called 9 Decades Well Spent, The Story of My Life. So Bud, tell us, why did you decide to write a book?
Well, actually, I have 5 children and I have grandchildren. And quite often, when we're together, they would ask me things about when I was their age, you know. That's one reason. The other reason is that in my book, I left home when I was 19 years old. My dad had been injured and I had to drop out of school. And so he was better, and I was just 19. And I told him I didn't want to farm. I had dropped out for three years because he was injured in May, and I had to get out and put the crop in. So at that age, that wasn't a very easy task. So anyway, I over the years, I had put myself through school again, went to university, got a better job, worked hard, better job, worked hard, just kept that up. And I just noticed that I wanted to give a book out that the young people that are out there today have to appreciate that if you want to work hard and take advantage of the operation of the opportunities that you have, you could be as successful as I was. And I was very successful. I became the senior business advisor for Federated Co-op, and I also was invited to go up into the Inuit people and across in the Arctic and spend some time there, and that was a fascinating experience. So I had a very, that's why I'm saying I had I'm 92 years old, so I spent 10 decades, and I think I spent them well.
That's right. And it's called 9 Decades Well Spent, The Story of My Life by LP Bud Sarich, edited by Glenna M. Healy. So what was the writing process like? How did you go about writing it?
Well, Glenna is my cousin, and she is her mother and my mother were sisters. That's how. But I never got to know Glenna at all because they always lived in Calgary, and we were always on our home was always on the farm. And but anyway, I had a different occasion to talk to her on the phone, and she initiated it. She said, I don't really know you, and yet you're my first cousin. I said, well. She said, why don't you give me a little rundown of what you did for your life? And I did it, and her reaction was, holy smokes, why don't we do a book, she said. And so I said, well, that's too much work. I'm 92 years old. She said, well, don't worry about it. She said, I'll do all the typing and I'll do all the work. All you got to do is to give me the story. And so I kind of thought about it. And then I decided, well, like I'm telling other people to take up the opportunities to do things. Well, I better be, the same as that I'm preaching, And so that's what I did. I phoned her back later. I said, if you're willing to go for it, I'm willing to go. So away we went. But I'll tell you, it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, is right. So apparently you wrote things down and then dictated them over the phone to Glenna. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, that's the way it worked. I dictated them over the phone to Glenna, and she'd type it out. And then, I'd write out about, say, 10 or 15 pages. And then I'd dictate that on the phone. She'd write it out, type it out to me. And then after a while, she would read that back. Then I would do another 10 or 15 pages. And same process. She'd type it, and then we'd read it together, make sure everything was kind of lined up. And but those experiences back and forth, some of them times were twice a day, sometimes even 3 times a day. Because I if you want to know how much work it is to do that book, for me, on the 1st of April, I decided to do that. I would wake up in the morning and have my breakfast, and I would come to my room and I would sit at my desk here, and I would write till noon. I would have lunch, come back, write till supper time, have supper, write until I went to bed. And I did that for 3 months. So you can imagine that took a lot of effort from me.
And that started in April of 2021. Bud Sarich with 9 decades well spent. Bud, what kind of advice do you have for anyone else who wants to write their life story?
Well, I would say the biggest thing is to put a lot of thought into it, and be prepared for a lot of work, and be prepared for details too, because there's a lot of things that happen in your life that are actually happened by I don't know, by coincidence or something. And anyway, that's the kind of thing you have to be prepared for. And it has to be. I think the other thing that I'm winning a lot of compliments. My book is now going to be registered in the archives in Saskatchewan and Regina, and I'm getting a lot of comments from people that they not only had an interesting story, but when I went into the Arctic, for example, or if I was at my house, I had a house at the lake as well, Baker Lake. When I give them that, talked about that, I give them the story about how Baker Lake was established there, because it's just the Saskatchewan River widened,
Right.
And that's something was a lot of people always said, I learned so much from your book, so I appreciated that as well.
And that's Bud Sarich with 9 decades well spent, the story of my life, written by L.P. Bud Sarich, edited by Glenna M. Healy. Bud, thank you very much. Thank you for listening to our story with Glenna Healy and Bud Sarich, all about the book 9 Decades Well Spent. And you can obtain a copy by emailing 9decades@shaw.ca. That's all one word, 9decades@shaw.ca for a copy of the book, which is called 9 Decades Well Spent. Thank you. Hope to hear from you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.